Why is it not a green light?
I don't know.
Okay, here we go. Call to order our work session of December 17th. It doesn't look like we have a roll call, so I guess we don't need a quorum. Is that correct?
I think you still have to have 4 people here, but you do.
Of course.
But I don't think we have to officially do the roll call like in a meeting.
Okay.
Everybody's.
Okay. Next order is, we're not approving the agenda, so I'm just going to go ahead and add, under staff comments, you've got staff comments. I'm going to ask the board members to make comments early on in the meeting as well. So we'll go ahead and ask for staff comments, and I'm not quite sure who's going to speak for the staff.
No comment. No comments.
No comment from the staff. I'm from Harborside either.
Okay. I'll ask the board for any comments now. The reason I'm doing this is because I think anybody who might be watching this might not stick around for the whole work session. If you got something to say, now's the time.
I read through this morning, and one thing that I just really was curious about is how the survey was advertised. Like, how did it get sent out to people to answer the questions?
Yeah, the surveys were available for 8 months. We sent out 2 rounds of postcards to everyone's P.O. box at the beginning and end of the process. And we've reached out to as many community organizations as we could. We were actually here in front of this commission as well to kind of just describe and educate the public of what a comprehensive plan is and the importance of the participation of filling out the surveys. We had 3 town hall meetings at the end of last winter in April, where we kind of were able to present some of the data, but the surveys were still open for another month, and so we were able to plug it there. I'm sure there were we had it on the radio, we had like a radio ad for it.
And then email notifications to the city
Yeah.
and Facebook.
All typical city.
Awesome.
We had a work session with the Planning and Zoning Commission that helped us draft the questions for it, and so the public was kind of aware that it was coming through that process as well.
And then flyers with the QR code were posted around town, all the usual
Yeah.
boards that people post stuff.
Awesome.
We'll probably get back into that a little bit more.
Yeah, and that was what I was just really most curious about, especially when I read the front page here. And there's a lot of great information in here, and I'm really looking forward to hearing all about it.
Board member Sutter, Regis?
No, I read it, I went through the last one we did when I was working for the city, so they did a great job getting all the stuff and getting it lined out. And Dwayne was part of the last one, so he knows all about it too, so, yeah, no, I think it's a good thing.
Vice Chair Atwood.
No, I don't have anything else to add. I just, in terms of, these whiteboard sessions and getting good feedback from the community, and you guys did a great job. My joke was always, if you wanted to get comments, you pretty much needed to give away pizza to people. But that's, anyway, you got a lot of good content.
Well, first, I'd like to thank everybody for attending. We're short 2 members, and I would ask anybody, all of you, to make an outreach for people. We need at least 2 more members, and if we had more applicants, there might be room. But I'm not, and then as far as this, I'm really excited to get into this and for you to bring it to us and administration to bring it to us to work over it.
I don't have any comments.
Oh, did I jump over you?
You did.
Well, yeah, I kind of joined you 2 together on that.
Yeah, no, it's fine. It was a good survey, and my only comment is I was a little bit shocked by the low percentage of respondents, but you gave everybody every opportunity, so.
Okay, so how would you like to go through this page by page? In your introduction or background, you talked about PACAV. Primarily, you'd like input from them on some particular topics. And what I noticed is in the survey that there was almost nothing, I would say almost nothing on commerce or industry, the docks, harbors, all those things that drive it, the quality of life. There was a lot of that. So how would you like to go through this?
Well, we put together a PowerPoint that kind of combines the town hall feedback with the survey information.
You want to do a PowerPoint?
Yeah.
Oh, all right, let's get right to it.
And so, yeah, we can run through that, and then, again, yeah, that's why we want to meet with all these different groups, because you have the expertise that might not, like, you have to be kind of generic in surveys. If you get too specific, it's going to be so long that people aren't going to fill them out, and so we're kind of in the process of following up with organizations to, like, share the kind of generalized feedback, and then we'd love some input from this commission about what you would like to see addressed in the comprehensive plan based on your kind of expertise in working with this area. So, yeah, we're happy to kind of jump into.
Let's go through the PowerPoint and probably come back for questions and work discussion.
One quick thing.
Yep.
Just reminding you that I'm gonna step out at 1300, and I just don't wanna be rude, just let everybody know I gotta step out at 1300.
So how long is your presentation going to take?
Might take a little under that, but yeah.
Give Norm a chance to comment on some of it?
Yeah, if it's get to that time, we can stop and
all right,
make
good.
some comments.
Okay, we do the lights or? Thank you.
All right, there we go. And so, because we've come before, and I think we've done a good job educating the public on a comprehensive plan, we won't kind of go into too much detail, but it is a visionary document that we're looking to create. We have a current one, but it started in 2020 when COVID hit, and so kind of a lot of things just went off the rails. And so, yeah, we're looking to reach out to the public, get feedback, and draft a plan here. We're doing this project in-house, so it'll be a time-consuming project, but we're getting to know the community really well, the organizations, and so, yeah, we're looking forward to connecting with everyone. The surveys, when we put them out, when we did research on other comprehensive plans, we liked a lot of them that broke down their communities into looking at their towns as a people, as in a place, and as an economy. And so we had 3 surveys that kind of focused on those areas, with a 4th survey that was a kind of an overarching vision survey. And so, and I've already kind of spoken to the time period that the surveys were open for. Between the 4 in combination, we had about just under 1,200 respondents that provided input, 66 questions, and then when we had the 3 community workshops, we had about 100 community members attend those. And so we put 2 reports together that summarized the results of those. I think that was in your packet, and then this presentation is kind of a combination of that information. And so kind of our goal today is to kind of present the information that we found and then kind of get feedback from the commission, like I mentioned before. The first couple slides here, we'll kind of just breeze through. It's more about who filled out the surveys. We had about 8.8% respondent rate of the total population. The inside city limit crew bested the outside city limit crew by 1,200, but the outside city limit crew had a better representation in terms of total percentage of population, with 10.5 compared to just under 7%. And this slide is kind of going over the age range, and just based on the graph, some of these will be difficult to read, so we'll try to do our best to explain them, but you also have the slides in front of you too. It's easier to follow and read along that way, so just FYI. It should be pretty easy for people watching on YouTube to read it though. But our biggest age demographic was that 40 to 49 age range, which covered roughly a quarter of our respondents. And then in terms of household, we had 2-person households were by far the largest demographic in terms of that number. And so Courtney and I are going to kind of go back and forth between the 4 different topics. And so I'm going to turn over to Courtney to talk about the vision response.
All right, so we have a few slides in here for each of the surveys that outline the questions, and this was mainly since this PowerPoint will be on legislative history. We wanted people to be able to refer back to a slide if they wanted to know the exact wording of the questions. But moving on, so the first question in the vision survey was, what adjectives come to mind when you think of Seward? And so you'll see in the bubble there, the largest words are the ones that were used more often in the survey responses. So this was an open-ended question, and we just tallied up how often the words were used and created a word cloud here. So a lot of these large, most commonly used words for what people think of when they think of Seward are positive, beautiful, friendly community. So those are great things to keep in mind Seward. And then in your opinion, what community organizations and or events are part of what makes Seward's identity? And so this was also open-ended. The numbers to the right of each of those events are how often they were mentioned in survey responses, and so we see the most commonly mentioned ones were the 4th of July events, Mountain Marathon Race, and then arts as a general concept, and then those subcategories beneath it were ones that were mentioned. But yeah, we see this theme of arts a lot in a lot of the survey responses throughout, and then harbor and fishing events also high up there, charter, salmon derby, all of those things. Then which of the following do you think positively contribute to Seward's existing identity? I think it's great, community friendliness is right up there at the top, and then of course those community events and festivals, so it's, those are really valued and important to our community to maintain that existing identity. Then we had some open-ended questions here about what you love about Seward and what you would love to see in Seward. And so we have the Seward adults, their responses, since we primarily received responses on the surveys by adults, but then we went to the middle school and the high school to get responses from those youth, so you'll see their input later on. So the adults said what we love about Seward, we love the sense of community and the friendly atmosphere, downtown area, the art and culture events, that small town feel. What we would love to see, that more focus on local year-round residents. That's a theme that comes up a lot in the survey responses. Balanced tourism, more indoor recreation and family entertainment activities. Then when we went to the middle school, the middle schoolers, what they love about Seward, the natural beauty and everything is in walking distance. They also love that small town feel, and they love their four-wheeling and dirt biking. And what we would love to see more of, they're pointing out that they want to see affordable housing, they want to see better roads, funding for education, and also dirt bike trails. So while we were at the middle school and high school, we did an activity with them where we gave them a blank poster board and told them to create their ideal community. So we, gave them the basic guidelines of you'll need schools, stores, homes, and then places to recreate, and just let them go at it. And then while they were creating their ideal community, we gave them some different scenarios. So the first scenario was, your population is booming, where are you going to put more housing to accommodate the increase in population? So they had to work in some more neighborhoods or maybe apartments or something, however they deemed appropriate in their community. And then we would tell them there's a factory that wants to come to town, but it's controversial. Where are you going to put this factory? And so then they had to find a place within their community that they thought would be appropriate to put a factory that had some controversy around it. And then the final scenario was that tourism has spiked in your community. How will you accommodate the needs for tourists? And so it was interesting to see how each of the groups kind of problem solved with these scenarios. And so you can see, on the one on the left, the factory in that far corner, and you can see how different groups envision schools and stores and what stores and restaurants they want put in their community. And then I also love to see how they incorporated the recreational aspects or those natural environmental aspects, and water and mountains being something that they felt was important. Then when we went to the high school, we asked the high schoolers what they love about Seward, and they also brought out the natural beauty and the small town feel. They like the local businesses and walking downtown. And what they would love to see is more stores, lower prices, and less about the tourists, more about the locals. And then these are some of the ideal communities that were drawn by the high schoolers. Once again, incorporating a lot of those natural features and the different setups for housing and stores, which is fun to see their creations. Then these were the results from our community workshops. we asked a few questions. As we stated, the surveys were still out, but we wanted to ask some questions that might supplement some of the feedback we were getting from the surveys. So what makes it challenging to live in Seward? The key takeaways were the limited access to resources and services, and then the concerns about the school system, a high cost of living, and then that seasonal economy, how to find that balance with the year-round economy. And then what do you value most about living in Seward? Once again, that access to nature and the outdoor amenities and the small community, and then the community friendliness and just that neighborliness in the community. And then what do you want Seward to look like 10 years from now? So these are definitely key aspects that we want to see included in the comprehensive plan. But yeah, the strong education system, year-round economy, affordable housing, and that small town feel, and then more local amenities.
All right, so this was our quality of life survey, which is our people survey. So again, mainly for record keeping, those are all the questions that were asked word for word, but we'll delve into them more informally. Do you see yourself living in Seward in 5 years? And so on the bottom it says how long you've lived in Seward, and that would kind of determine your answer here. And so if you've lived in Seward less than 5 years, it's still 2 to 1 that you see yourself living here in 5 years. And then 5 to 10, 11 to 20 years, the longer you live here, the more likely you see yourself here in 5 years, until that age range of 21 to 40 years. And I think it's a pretty good educated guess that that's your population that has recently retired or is approaching retirement. So maybe they're thinking, is Seward the place for me for my latter years of life? And so I think that can be a focus of how we're working with our elderly population to make sure that if they want to stay here, this is a safe place. But once you've been here 40 plus years, you're staying here. This is home. So, and then if you see yourself here or not, these are kind of the reasons why. And so Courtney kind of already mentioned a lot of the reasons that people want to stay here, but if people are likely to leave, it's just a lack of year-round focus, resources, healthcare, job opportunities, cost of living. So yeah, typical things that we're hearing over and over. What healthcare services would you like to see improved in Seward? This was a fun one because there's a lot of people-oriented services that were dwarfed by the animal hospital, which was our first response. And so people want to see an animal hospital here. And then when you kind of go through the rest of these, I think we need to delve into it a little bit, because some of these represent a need that Seward doesn't have, while others represent services Seward does have. And so the question is it lack of quality that people are seeing with those services, or is it a lack of education and not knowing that Seward actually has physical therapy or mental health counselors and whatnot? So a little bit more work that we can delve into that one. Our fire chief wanted to just get a few questions on EMS, and so about 3/4 of the people are satisfied with 911 services, and the expectation of how fast you expect someone to arrive. It was kind of an interesting question when you live at the end of the road system in rural Alaska. I'm assuming very different answers than if we were in a bigger town, but pretty much everyone is at least under 20 minutes, with 5 to 10 being that bigger number. And then just the awareness that ground transportation between EMS from Seward to Anchorage is not available. A pretty large population don't know that. I worked at the hospital as an ER tech for a couple of years during the COVID years, and the emergency room there for traumas, it's kind of a patch them up job. If it's more serious, we got to get you to Anchorage, which often is a life flight. But if you can't get a helicopter or fixed wing plane in here, then it's literally an ambulance will come from Anchorage to Seward, pick you up and take you. And so that's a long time that you're kind of waiting to get to medical care that you need. So maybe a little more education there, and then you see half the population saying that transport service should be available. Improvements to public health and safety, more paid positions, training, drug concerns, funding and support, just some of the different answers that we got on that one. What are the biggest challenges schools are facing? Inability to attract and keep qualified teachers, lack of funding, and decreased enrollment were those top 3. And on the right, this was some interesting data, do you have school-age children living at home? So 29% of the respondents do, and then that split is between if they're homeschooled or go to public school. And based on the respondents, 28% of the respondents homeschool their children, which is a very large number. The national average is 3.4, and understanding that homeschooling is more ingrained to the Alaskan culture, I would expect it to be higher than 3.4, but the state average is 16%. So Seward has a 12% jump or higher number. And so the question there is, in that 12%, would those parents send their kids to the public schools if some of those issues on the left were addressed? And so I think the two directions we can take this is how can we focus on those issues as a city and support those areas, working with the school district, while also making sure that we have resources for our homeschool family, because we have a large percentage of them that are doing that. And then these were just different answers to how we can improve our public schools. So more funding, affordable housing, kind of not a lot of surprises with those responses. How do you find out about events in the community? Word of mouth is the #1 response, and so I want you to remember that for a slide that we'll have later. But social media, flyers, emails, those are kind of the top 4 where most of the people seem to be getting their information. This one is how should Seward improve marketing? And so this survey, most of it was out before the Seward Folly became into existence. Community newspaper was #1, and so I think we've got some education to do to make sure the entire community is aware of that new resources as they grow and expand. And then Seward offers a variety of organized activities and then these are all different age groups. We have several of these types of graphs. Typically agrees on the left side, disagrees on the right, and there's like a neutral in the middle. So we kind of look at it as you take out the neutral, do you have a net positive or net negative? And going bottom up, toddlers and elementary age children seem to have a lot of organized activities for them, and then once you get to middle school and high school, it kind of decreases. And so there's maybe a focus there. How can we target that age group with organized activities? College students is really low, I think part because we don't have that many, and 2, I know Avtech has their own student activities coordinator, so it just might be a lack of education about what they're actually doing for their students there. But once you get back into adults and seniors, there actually is a pretty good feedback on that there are a lot of organized activities for that demographic. Which community events, activities do you wish were available in Seward? So again, the bigger the word, the more often it was responded. So movie theater, ice rink, bowling alley, winter activities, performing arts, some sort of community center were the top takeaways from that question. So this one, how do you prefer to receive notifications of city meetings? So that's a little more targeted than our just general activities. Where I said word of mouth was #1, but in terms of preference for at least city meetings, you can see word of mouth is their least preferred way. And so I think there's some improvement there for how we're getting the word out to people. The preference is really emails, social media, newspaper, newsletters. And so I'd like to think the city's actually done some good work with the new subscription service through the clerk's office. So if you're not aware of that, you can find out information through the city by signing up for which aspects of city life you're interested in. The city does have a Facebook page for social media. We do have the newspaper in town and newsletters. The city manager started a newsletter, and our office has kind of followed suit with the Planning and Zoning Commission. It just kind of, you read meeting packets, there's a lot of legal speak and can be hard to understand, but they try to put those meetings and resolutions and ordinances in more layman's terms, and so I think that's getting the word out and people are responding well to those. And then on the right, what is your involvement in city government? So that first question is, are you involved in city decisions and policy making? And the bottom one is, do you know how to be involved in city decisions and policy making? We had over 300 responded. You compare the 2 yeses, which is that dark blue color, you got about 120-ish respondents that know how to participate, and they do choose to participate. We have roughly 60 that know how to participate but choose not to, so it's more of an active choice. But then on the right, if you compare the 2 kind of turquoise colors, about 130-ish that, and it's a pretty good percentage, don't know how to participate and don't participate. And that could also be an intentional choice, but there could be a group in there that would participate if they knew how to. And so how can we educate our community to know the avenues they have to participate in meetings like this, P&Z, city council, etc. And this was how can we improve participation in city government. That number 2 response was, again, education on how to participate, equal representation with outside city limits, different responses there. We met with the Arts Council Monday night, which was a good meeting. Because again, that's really, as Courtney mentioned, part of the identity people feel in Seward. And so that first question is, do you participate in art and cultural activities? We have 80% say yes. And even with that high rate, that second question is, do we need more? And even with that high rate of participation, you have almost 60% of people saying, yeah, we still want or need more. And so definitely the arts is ingrained into this community. And so we had a fun question in there about, if you could design the next mural in Seward, what would it be? And these were just different ideas that were thrown out that we shared with the Arts Council and Mural Society. So this one, again, another one that's hard to read, but it says Seward's strengths regarding parks and recreation opportunities. And so I'm not going to go through that whole long list, but our top 4, there's a key word that joins them all, that they all have in common, and that word is access. So access to mountains, access to ocean, access to tidelands, access to regional open spaces. And so I think as we continue to develop, the big takeaway that we can include in this plan is, as the community develops, how do we make sure we're still protecting access to these areas that people appreciate and also kind of feel as part of Seward's identity. And, I missed that one. And on the right, this was a variety of recreational activities for me to do and it just kind of breaks down indoors, outdoors, and winter, summer, and a net positive all the way. Outdoors, I feel like was going to be an obvious if there's a lot to do outdoors. Winter indoors has a pretty good net positive, and even summer indoors, more people said agree than disagree for activities for them to do. And I think that's a lot to do with the work that is that quote. The City Parks and Rec, and specifically the Sports and Recreation Department, is doing an amazing job with all the different programs and activities. Courtney and I are in the competitive racquetball league, which is tournaments tonight, so come watch, 5 o'clock, AvTech. And then, it's different things that people would like to see in terms of recreation. And then these are from the workshop discussions that we did back in April. The big takeaways were having more local amenities like a rec center or outdoor attractions, strong school system, clean and well-maintained city, just more local services and resources. And then what do you wish for future generations growing up in Seward? Again, the school system is a big theme, energy efficiency, home and businesses, and then a year-round economy for future generations. I'll turn it over to Courtney for the next one.
All right, so I'll move into our land use survey. So looking at Seward as a place. So first, what natural hazards are of greatest concern to you within Seward? And it's probably not surprising, the top 4 are flooding, tsunamis, earthquakes, and landslides. And our current plan has a whole section on natural hazards and various goals for preparing for reducing the impacts from disasters. And so this, of course, would be a continued section within our comprehensive plan. Then I would support additional restrictions in code to conserve environmentally significant areas of Seward and historically significant areas of Seward. You can see there under the agree on the far left that people are in favor of conserving these environmentally and historically significant areas. Then what public services or capital improvements would you support your tax dollars funding? So once again, this is a pretty long list, but the top one is to maintain that city contract with AvTech to use the gym facilities. And then interestingly, the second one was to fund a grant writer position that could seek funding for the items listed on this list. So that is always a theme, right, to have the necessary funding to do what we want to do in our community. So then we have a question here on whether Seward should support food security efforts, and if they should pursue alternative energy sources. And I just wanted to point out that there may be quite a few questions within this survey or in the results, or even in the comprehensive plan itself, that may not seem directly linked to the city, and some people may find that confusing, but really the comprehensive plan is a community plan that all organizations take responsibility for to implement and to use, and so we have priorities in the plan that may not be a direct responsibility for the city to do, but something the city can support or that other organizations can support, and so it's a community effort. But food security efforts are essentially ensuring that all people have reliable access to enough affordable and nutritious food, and so this could involve like supporting community gardens, farmers markets, food banks, meal delivery, or supporting local food networks. And then of course alternative energy sources would be supporting sources such as solar, wind, hydro, geothermal, and wave or tidal energy sources. Then considering Seward's existing transportation networks, what are strengths for the community today? And the top two are trails and then the walkability of Seward, that proximity to amenities. And Seward does have a lot of great aspects that make it a walkable community. So the streets and blocks are short and buildings are close to the street frontage. Homes and amenities are generally close together. But then if you notice on it's second from the bottom and then fourth from the bottom, pedestrian and bicycle paths and the condition of sidewalks are not a strength in our community. And so this would be something that we could identify as, this would be a good place to have a goal in our comprehensive plan to improve our pedestrian and bicycle paths and condition of sidewalks to further add to that strength of our community being so walkable. And then what mode of transportation do you use the most to get around Seward? So on this question, people could answer more than one, so they could choose that they use a personal vehicle and also bike. So it's a little, you have to consider that when you're looking at the numbers there. But if we do add up the number of people that chose biking and walking, there are a lot of people that do consider those as alternative modes of transportation, and also add to the previous slide of why people probably choose these alternative transportations because Seward is so walkable, and also highlighting the importance of having better paths and sidewalks. And then Seward should support the use of sustainable vehicles. It's pretty split between people that agreed and were neutral or that disagreed, and so a good follow-up question for us to reach out to the community would be, to just ask why people answered the way they did on that, just to get some more information for the split results there. Then, what concerns do you have regarding parking in the city of Seward? So the first most common response was, I have no concerns, but then you take in consideration all of the responses below, all of those are concerns. And so there were more concerns than a lack of concerns. But a lot of the questions in our survey, especially this one, are more nuanced than we can capture in a short question. So we use them as a starting point for discussions. And so we've had a lot of deeper discussions with the Planning and Zoning Commission and the public to kind of dive more into what these concerns are. Because we understand that, when we phrase a question so broadly of what are your concerns, that people are going to be coming in with a different perspective of what their concerns may be. So, someone from the general public, their concern about parking may be just convenience and access, but then a developer may be coming in with concerns about cost and feasibility. And then, from the Planning and Zoning Commission, they're coming in with a concern of community impact and balance. And so that's why having deeper discussions on a lot of these questions that were in the survey is really important to kind of flush out these nuances. And then I would support more regulated parking, such as meters or limited hours in congested areas. We saw in our survey responses that there's a high percentage of people that disagreed, that they would not support more regulated parking. But in our continued discussions during during work sessions with the commission and going to organizations, we found that at first, in general, people's first response reflect opposition, but they become more willing to accept the idea of regulated parking if the year-round residents are taken into consideration by offering them a year-round discount or some sort of reduced price, so that we're not, making things more difficult for our year-round residents, but rather focusing more on that tourism influx and how we can use that tourist base to, feed the regulated parking and then have that benefit the year-round residents. Then most dangerous location sewer for vehicles and pedestrians. Not surprisingly, Port Avenue, the Seward Highway intersection was one of the main ones mentioned. The downtown intersections, we hear that a lot. There's with the parking, the street parking, there tends to be a lot of blind intersections, difficult turns, and being able to see vehicles coming. And then the Washington Railway and Fifth Avenue intersection is kind of an interesting one. And then general transportation comments to people want to see improved snow and ice removal on sidewalks and paths. And then a lot of extending bike paths on various roads and locations. Then we had a question, if there were safe sidewalks or trails, would you use other forms of transportation other than a vehicle? And 61% of people said yes, that they would. And then the reasons why people said they would not use other forms were because of the weather, or they live outside of town, or don't have enough time, they actually enjoy driving, or the roads and sidewalks aren't maintained, or they're transporting larger items or multiple items. And so when we look at these reasons for why people would not use other forms of transportation, we try to identify, what are things that we could possibly change or goals that we can implement in plans. So of course that roads and sidewalks not being maintained would be an area that we can work on to change and improve. Then we asked some few questions about city code and regulating land uses, and we asked if the current city code is effective in regulating appropriate land uses. And the majority of people were neutral, but we did have a higher response say that they did not think city code was effective versus those that thought it was effective. And so reasons why city code was not effective, people felt that there's too many nightly rentals, or that code is too restrictive, there's no enforcement of code, there's inconsistencies in code, or the code is antiquated and needs to be updated. And then we asked a follow-up question of, has city code inhibited you from reasonably developing the property you own? And so we had to ask whether people lived or owned property inside city limits, because remember from the first few slides that we did take survey responses from people inside and outside city limits, and so city code just pertains to inside city limits. So for those who own property within city limits, 38 of the respondents said that yes, city code has inhibited them, and then these were the reasons that they provided for why code has inhibited them. So a lot of it being that it's too restrictive, and just over-regulation. Then we asked a question of what height of building should Seward allow, and for context, Seward has always allowed 3-story buildings. The height previously allowed in the development requirements in code was 34 feet, and so this height adequately accommodated 3-story buildings in the past. But as building code has changed and building materials have gotten larger, more durable, and building code more restrictive, 34 feet would accommodate a 3-story building without developers having to make expensive adjustments. And so you see here reflected in the responses that the community strongly still supports allowing 3-story buildings. And so when city code was updated to 38 feet, that was taken into consideration that 38 feet would still allow for 3 stories. for developers in the community to maintain that small town feel. Then what are the barriers to developing land in Seward? A lot of these are probably not surprising. Cost to build, lack of local building supplies, lack of land, lack of available contractors. But understanding barriers can help us, formulate better solutions by understanding that, challenging terrain and lack of land, while we can't change that, what are some changes to code that would then allow people to better utilize the land that is able to develop? Then what are types of development you oppose in Seward regardless of location? This was an open-ended question, so these categories here were not listed as multiple choice for people to select. People could put in whatever type of development they opposed, and then we went through and tallied up all of the types of land uses and types of development that people put, and then created this bar chart from what responses people put. So you'll see at the top there's an other category, and this was just a mix of all sorts of types of development, so it wasn't like a specific type in that other category, but there may have been, like 2 or 3 mentions of one type of use and 2 or 3 of another, but all of the other development types that are listed had enough mentions to be included on this graph. Then we had a question of, do you own your home? And it may be surprising to see that 80% of the respondents said that they own their own home. And the national average for people who own their own homes is 65%. In Alaska, it's 66% of the population owns their own home. And then in Seward, from the census data, 69% of the population owns their own home. So the reason for this larger percentage may come from the demographics of the people taking the survey. So if you remember back to the age group of the respondents, 70% of the people taking the survey were 40 years old or older. And so this age group typically does own their own home, and so that may explain why 80% said they own their own home here. And then if you own your own home in Seward, do you rent it out? And so you'll see there, yes, there's short-term rental or a whole house, or short-term rental, partial house, and then long-term rental, or no, they don't rent it out. And then of course, the part of the respondents who don't own property in Seward city limits. The greatest barriers to purchasing a home in Seward: price of homes, competition from second home buyers, and lack of inventory were the top answers there. And then the greatest barriers to being able to rent a home were lack of available rentals, cost of monthly rent, and cost of utilities. Things negatively impacting neighborhoods. This list is no specific order of how common the answers were. Just this was the responses that we saw the most often. So lack of affordable housing, vacant homes, aging homes in need of repair, traffic congestion, cost of living, light pollution, some of those responses. And then strengths of residential neighborhoods. Kind of see again those reoccurring themes of the character of the residential neighborhoods, pedestrian-friendly neighborhoods, and just general neighborly friendliness. And then in our workshop discussion, we had a land use map where we did an exercise with the community. So each of those dots, you'll see we have green dots, yellow, blue, and red, and they represented a different type of land use. So the green represented parks and open space, and yellow represented residential, blue represented industrial, and red represented commercial. And so we told individuals to take these dots and to put them on the map in a location where they felt that this type of land use would be appropriate. So if they put a red dot down, they were saying that they felt that commercial land uses were appropriate in this area, or yellow, that they felt residential land uses were appropriate in this area. And so this exercise will then guide our creation of the future land use map of Seward, which then shows, ideal locations for these type of land uses of commercial, industrial, residential, and parks and open space.
Last survey was our economy survey, or economic development survey. We just simply asked, are you business owners? So 23% of our respondents to the following information do own their own business. What are the barriers for seasonal businesses? So lack of employee housing is that first response, and we see that a lot with the Planning and Zoning Commission. Over the last couple of years, we've seen a lot of employee campgrounds. A lot of employers are having to supply housing if they're going to be able to get seasonal workers here. This one, what are the greatest barriers for year-round businesses? So we've got a lot of work to do in this one because they're pretty even split, and so if you tackle one of them, you still probably need to deal with the other ones as well to get like a comprehensive resolution to some of these issues. But lack of clientele, lack of employees, cost of utilities, lack of housing, even in the winter. I know there's a lot of winter housing available, but I'm guessing some of that is people not wanting to have to like worry and stress when it comes to March and April about finding summer housing that they might be getting kicked out of. And then the other barriers there listed on the right. When it comes to services that Seward lacks, so again, larger the word, more common the response. We've lost a lumber yard, a couple hardware stores, so those are there, veterinary clinic, restaurants, which we have, so I'm guessing that just means more options, healthcare. So yeah, some of the bigger answers for that question. Is the lack of child care in Seward a barrier to your employment or business? This was interesting. So 71% said no, and that might seem like, oh, smaller percent are saying that's not an issue, but if you kind of compare that data to the one from the first survey where we asked if you have, school-age children at home, it's the same breakdown, 71 to 29. So that maybe doesn't necessarily count for anyone like not yet school age, but comparing those two data sets, it's essentially anyone that's got, most of the people who have children are saying that it's a barrier to them. And so you see that first response, childcare is not an issue for me because I don't have children, so that's where most of that 71% of the population is coming in. So yeah, childcare definitely viewed as a concern or issue that we want to address. Yeah, this was an interesting one. What is your preference for growth in Seward? So orange, that's population growth. So pretty good appetite for population growth, significant growth and growth. Pretty strong numbers there. You got a bit of a number for no growth, but no one's really saying we need to decrease our population. And then the other two colors are your winter and summer economic growth numbers. And so pretty big appetite for finding ways to round out the year-round economy with some winter economic growth. That's your light blue, grayish color. So yeah, pretty significant numbers for growth. And summer economic growth is a pretty good split, which we found in the survey as well as our town halls, where the community is pretty split on that one. So a lot of appetite for growth, a lot of appetite for reduced growth or no growth, and so really no consensus in the community of what that should look like at the moment. However, regardless of development, should development be balanced with the need to protect our environmental resources? So yeah, strong numbers for agree, and again, that goes back to that access priority for the community to keep access to those important areas for them. Do you work in tourism? And so about 2/3 no, about a quarter of the response is yes. And so you can kind of compare that with the appetite for summer growth. And so you still got a decent population of people who don't work in tourism that still support summer growth. And then how does tourism positively impact Seward? There on the right. And so there's taxes and just creates businesses and job opportunities for the community. And this next one was the opposite side, negatively impacting Seward. Your top three are cost of living, long lines at stores and restaurants, increased traffic, but kind of a plethora of responses to that one. And then this last question, I won't go over all the responses, but it's kind of like the framework that we're working with the comprehensive plan is how can Seward balance the development of a vibrant year-round community while still supporting the seasonal business economy. So some good answers there, but yeah, trying to find that balance is really, I think, what sewer needs to focus on moving forward. When you look at our workshop discussions, some good feedback here. So we had different charts that people could check, and so this one was asking about appetite for growth in these economic development drivers. And so commercial fishing, so the green is significant and yellow is moderate, so those are still like appetite for growth, so pretty significant growth opportunities there. Education and workforce development, strong, significant growth appetite. Small businesses, the same. Healthcare, the same. And then, as you can see with tourism, that's where that split happens again, where strong, you got half the numbers for growth, half the numbers for no growth or reducing or smaller than existing. Share your perspective on what Seward offers in these economic development supporters. So this gives us an idea of where the community could see improvement, housing. Yeah, red is too little, and so you had one response that said just about right, just the green. And so housing is definitely a concern. We're seeing more lots available and more single-family homes on the market, but a lot of those prices are pretty astronomical, and so we're working with the Planning and Zoning Commission about the missing middle housing pieces. So like someone that gets an education degree and wants to move to Seward, they're not going to be able to develop land or afford $500,000 house, but is there an affordable apartment that they can rent for a couple of years to determine if this is the place they want to put roots and then maybe develop a lot? And so that's kind of what we're seeing. That's a nationwide issue, not just a Seward issue. Transportation, too little transportation, food security, recreation, more about the just right, but still an appetite for a little bit more. Same with public safety. Renewable energy, pretty big appetite for more of that. Childcare, again, everyone's responding that's too little, so that's a pretty good consensus. And then subsistence resources, there's a little bit of a split there as well. And then what economic development ideas do you have? And the key takeaways were more affordable electricity, winter recreational activities, and supporting local economic development opportunities. And so that was and this is our last slide. It basically just shows what's next, and all these different circles are parts of the process of developing feedback. And so the surveys are long, town halls are long, these types of meetings are long, and we'll kind of, at some point, put it all together and figure out how to draft a plan together. So Norman gives you 7 minutes before you gotta get out of here. If you have any feedback or
No,
questions.
that's not true. We're not limited to leave at 1 o'clock, or?
No.
No, but he was just
No,
trying to.
Norm will. Yeah.
Yeah, I know you touched on so many things, but I just, one of the big things I didn't see on there was, not a big thing, but on parking, I know they started doing a little bit more enforcement, but it's actually being abused by the workers in town. They know the little ins and outs of everything, and then they're abusing, especially down in the harbor. And then, on the height restrictions, you can always ask for a variance, correct, for height, for apartments and stuff? Okay. And then, I know the council years ago were working on limiting the B&Bs and VRBOs. I'm not sure where they are with that. I don't know if that was brought up at any of the meetings or not, but,
Yeah, a couple years ago, the city changes regulations on that, so there is a restriction now that for any new developments have to be owner occupied, at least in the residential zoning districts. And yeah, a few other ones there. So we've seen a kind of a plateau of short-term rentals in the last few years, so we're not seeing more of them right now.
How comfortable are you with the data collection? Norm mentioned VRBOs and B&Bs. I see people posting on social media with numbers all over the place that don't exactly jive with the numbers that we see in this survey, for instance. So how comfortable are you with that data that you're using?
Pretty comfortable. That's one of the things I'm not comfortable doing that in-house, and so we work with a company called Granicus. They also do the city's website design, and so they do all of the internet scraping of all the different websites that you could go reserve an Airbnb or VRBO. And so they track all that information, and then we work with them to provide all the short-term rental permits that we get. And so we compare the two lists, and if there's a discrepancy, those are the people that we know that are out of compliance that we can follow up with and make sure that they either stop, or sometimes it's just as simple as they don't have a business permit yet with the city and they need to get on that. So that's been a pretty good partnership. We used a different company for 3 years, and then we found a better one that we started with this last year, and it's been going pretty well.
You'd agree that's a pretty important piece of information. I mean, the numbers you're using aren't nearly as drastic as some of the numbers that people are putting out there. Not that it's good, bad, or indifferent, I'm not talking about that, but it's important that you base policy on accurate data.
Yeah.
Sounds like you've gone the extra mile.
I feel pretty good about where the data's coming from. If someone's renting under the table, cash only, not on websites, you can't really do much about that. That's really the only stuff that we'd be missing now. So, yeah, I feel pretty confident about our numbers in that arena.
Good.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I'll just open it up for discussion, questions, comments, or?
I think it was a really good presentation. I appreciate all your guys' hard work on it. The only thing that I would like to see is maybe one more focused on small business, or how we develop Seward industrial, or bring more jobs to Seward for like year round. I don't know if there's been one done before in the past that focused on that. Like how we go about doing something like that.
Yeah, and I guess that's the point of the plan, right? It's kind of a visionary document, like where do we want to see our community 10 years from now? And so this is just one piece of the puzzle of sharing what the public is saying, but that's kind of where we want feedback from this meeting, is like from the work that you do, what do you think is a priority for the plan? So that would be an element that we would include in the plan when we start the drafting process. So that and any other, because you all are, the different groups we're meeting with have more of an expertise. We kind of have a general overview of kind of connecting with everyone, but we want to talk to the experts to make sure that we're not missing anything. And so that will definitely be the focus of the plan.
I guess the question I would have is, what's your sense of tolerance for code and zoning change and allowed use changes that, might be able to facilitate some of what, the citizens are asking for? You could say, I like the idea of this, or I like the idea of that, but, moving to the next step and saying, well, this is going to affect land use in this way. I mean, are people making those connections, and do you feel like there's a receptiveness?
Like I came into this job without much government experience. My original career and degrees, like I have a master's in education, and so it's been a learning experience for me, and I feel like I've tried to tailor that into like how we do our work with the commission and the public. So like building height, on the surface, like, hey, should we raise the building height in town? I think most people are like, no, that sounds like a horrible idea. We have a beautiful view shed. But then when we educate the public of like, hey, we just need to go 4 feet so that we can maintain 3-story buildings, and that's going to help developers do projects so that we don't have all these vacant or dilapidated lots in town that will infill the community, not really affect the view shed a whole lot, and benefit the town as a whole. And I think that's kind of the approach that we're taking, is like, that's our job, is to research and see what other communities are doing, what are the national trends in planning and zoning, and if it fits in Seward, like, how can we educate the public to the reasons why? And I think we've done a decent job with that. We're able to get accessory dwelling units allowed in town. Building height has gone up a little bit to accommodate that. We've already seen some developments starting to work on projects because of that, and parking is a big one that the commission is going to kind of get across the finish line for a recommendation to council at their January meeting. And so there was, we did a whole presentation on the history of parking and zoning codes from all the way back into the 1916, 17 when they first started, and how they've evolved, and a lot of times they've been just copy and pasted. And when you kind of explain that, it's like, oh, maybe that makes sense why the code isn't really great right now in certain aspects, because we just copy and pasted from another town. It's not really specific to Seward, but how can we make it specific to Seward? So I think when we put in the effort to do that, I think we've gotten good responses with the public.
Melissa?
So yeah, I just kind of want to clarify this whole process and the flow of what's happening. So right now, the city's looking at the comprehensive plan, which is like your long-term goals for Seward as it grows as a community, a 10-year plan, so to speak. And then within this comprehensive plan is where the city will get together annually, or maybe every couple of years to create their strategic plan. So how do we make this happen this year, or this happen the next year? So what's kind of the timeline? So you've done the survey. When do you expect the comprehensive plan to start coming together? And with that, the strategic plans to see what our next steps are?
Good question. We're doing this in-house. Like Homer's going through their revamp right now, and they've spent like $600,000 on their process. And so, because we're doing this in-house, it's kind of in addition to our full-time job. It's going to be like a couple-year process. We're hoping to have met with, right now we're meeting with city departments, community organizations, and we kind of want to get into the drafting stage this year. And the drafting, an ideal comprehensive plan has like your vision and overarching goals to kind of achieve that. And then you have like, what are your policies that kind of help achieve those goals? And then your specific action items. And we kind of want to treat it more like a living document versus this 10-year document that gets put on the shelf and we just do it again in 10 years. And so I think we would need to have conversations with city management about what does the strategic plan look like in addition to, or are we making our action steps of the comprehensive plan, like this, essentially the strategic plan within the comprehensive plan? Because I think our goals and policies could be more long-term, but every year or two, that's what we want to revisit is our action items to achieve those. How are we doing on those? What can we check off and put in a different part of the plan to say, hey, this is what we've achieved, and this is what we can add to it. And so I don't have a full answer on that just yet. And we'll probably have a better idea once we get to the drafting process, but it could be something in addition to, or even kind of incorporated into the comprehensive plan.
And just a follow-up question, so when city council, city administration, planning and zoning, all of the PACAB, all of the different departments and agencies and groups that get together and make decisions, the driving factor behind the decisions being made should be kind of like, what's our comprehensive plan say, this is what Seward wants. And I've seen some of these things already kind of start to improve, like housing, for example. I know we've had this conversation, like how many houses have been built in Seward in the last year. Prices they're not coming down necessarily, but they're stabilizing. Houses are not selling like they were 2 years ago when we first started this process. So are you making any changes based on what's happened since the survey's been concluded, or is that just still part of the planning process?
Yeah, but still, like we'll kind of keep all that in mind when we get to like the drafting section. Yeah, because there's just a lot of pieces to that puzzle that we need to look at. And yeah, well, by the time we get to the drafting, you're correct. Like it'll be a bit of a time since these surveys were filled out, and so we might need to do some of the work to see like what's out there. But part of P&Z's role is to have like at least one annual public hearing about the comprehensive plan. And so I mean, like how do we want to bring the public back in as we continue this process? Because we want to feel like we're the facilitators of the plan, not the drafters of the plan. It's like the community should draft it. And so like city departments should be able to use the plan when they're asking for funding from city council. That's how they should base their decisions. But Courtney was right, like it's not just even though the city puts the plan together, it's not the city's job to like check off everything. We've had community organization meetings where they've been unable to get grant money, for example, because they weren't able to pull things specific enough from the comprehensive plan, because it might be, the current one may be targeted more towards a city type effort. So like how can a community organization benefit from what they want to achieve by pulling aspects of the comprehensive plan? So I feel like I want to make a few changes there.
No, thank you, I appreciate that.
I gotta run. Thanks everybody.
Thanks, Norm.
Great job in there.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas, Happy New Year.
Thanks, Norm.
I got a couple things. Now go back to the summary on your page 1. You're asking PACAB specific expertise in port operations, maritime commerce, tourism, activity, harbor-related land use. I think we could talk about that a little bit, but and Norm would have been, and Tony, of course, are actively administrating a business portion of Seward. It's not only important to to people's activities, but it's a moneymaker. One of the things that I don't see in this report is much attention on economics. There's a couple categories that talks about economics, and it talks about small businesses. It talked about AvTech, and the Sea Life Center. They're both major employers to a great degree, but I think a lot of the people that respond to these surveys, and I've been involved with several strategic plans and comprehensive plans, and the number of people that respond to them is surprisingly low. And I personally have come to the conclusion that a lot of times the people who are most affected by this have their heads down trying to make a living and don't pay as much attention to these kinds of responses as they should. So it becomes the duty of their government, if you will, or leaders in the community to speak for them. Going back to 1964, the earthquake destroyed this town's economy. And the leaders in 1964, and my mentor, Willard Dunham, amongst others, talked about the importance of becoming a multifaceted economy, never relying on a single industry. We are blessed today with the result of their work. We have the railroad, Board Member Atwood's involved with, the harbor, Board Member Groom's involved with. We have the JAG and Catalyst. These are major employers. This industry is critical to Seward. And I don't see enough attention placed in at least the questions and answers in this comp plan. And I would encourage that the final comp plan, and I agree with you, it's absolutely essential to have a comprehensive plan to bring to Lisa Murkowski or Dan Sullivan or whoever and say, this is what the community really needs, and there's the evidence of the support for it. I'm sure you have collected some data that you can fill those blanks in, but I would encourage that to be a much stronger part of the comprehensive plan. Where you want to be, that's great. You want biking trails, that's great. How are those people who are going to ride those bikes afford to be here in Seward? They need jobs, not just nebulous jobs, but real jobs. So those are my comments. I think I did respond to this survey as a comments.
Like I said, the survey results are just one piece of the puzzle, and so this is good information to hear from this commission, because that's how we get that type of priority in the plan, is hearing from you and what those priorities are. So if you have more specifics of the larger scale employers that should be prioritized, or just make sure that they, like, is that what you're saying, like to make sure like the relevance or importance of some of our bigger partners are included in the plan?
Oh, absolutely, but I would be reluctant to name them necessarily. You know, we hope all the success for Catalyst and JAG, but there'll be more. The former chair of PACAB, Laura Snyder, was involved with Exit Glacier. They were a major harbor user for a while. So they'll come and go a little bit, but the emphasis or importance of them, of those jobs, and the city's support of those jobs, or at least not creating blocks or obstacles.
Okay.
And you've done some of that by identifying places. Both in your slide and on the paper here, you show some economic development areas like the Uplands and SMIC, and there'll be some maybe other places. The kids did a nice job of drawing a factory on the bottom corner of the page, sort of. I don't know if you remember, but there was a developer in Anchorage, Randy Hobbs, who wanted to build a coal plant, and he was going to do it right about where the windmill was, a big boiler. Well, this town lit up and said no. So finding the right place for these kinds of developments is a good policy.
Yeah, I'm sure Jeff had to add to that. The surveys didn't miss any of the economic stuff that you're bringing up. Like we've specified, just a broad theme. And now we're doing the deeper dive, and we're meeting with different department heads, and so we have a interview set up with Harbor Master Sminsky, where we'll go deeper into what are his goals for the harbor, what are his goals for SMIC, the industrial area, to get those specifics in the plan of how we can increase and support that economic development for the port and the industrial area.
Well, I think, I agree, that'd be great to hear that, because I'm gonna speak for that welder coming to town. As a young man with a young family, or a dock worker, what I'm interested in is a job. That's what I'm interested in. Bike paths and libraries, and they're all window dressing. So,
But essential.
Have you considered doing a survey, some sort of survey? I know surveys can be cumbersome, but to businesses specific, to find out what some of the challenges to doing business in Seward are? Not necessarily just the general public, but to those that are actually the employers, the ones that are creating the jobs, and what are some of the challenges that businesses are facing in operating in and around Seward?
Yeah, and I'll take recommendations if you think there's a better way to get the broader audience, but we are working closely with the Chamber of Commerce. We've met with their board, we have a plan to go to one of their luncheons, and so we're kind of using their office as a way to kind of get into the business community and get feedback. But yeah, outside that, we haven't focused just on one organization, because right now we're in the stage of going to more formalized organizations versus I'm guessing some sort of maybe work session with P&Z where we invite the business community in. I don't know, we've tried that intentionality in the past with business organizations. When we were talking about parking, we just get a handful of people, so it's kind of difficult to say. Yeah, so if you have any recommendations on how to reach a broader audience, but right now we're currently planning to work closely with the chamber to try and reach as many businesses in town as we can.
Well, one of the things I thought about is, and I don't know how difficult it is to create a short survey like that, but specifically targeting businesses with business licenses, again, direct mailers. And I know you didn't get a lot of response from me. I mean, I was surprised to see how low of a percentage of people that actually took this survey were, because I remember seeing it all over the place when you were doing it.
Yeah, did our best.
I'm just wondering if there's something that, if you would have a better result from just the businesses, not the community as a whole.
Okay.
But it's just a thought, I know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like this sort of entrepreneurial idea. There are some things that government can do to facilitate business development, and there are some things that we can't do, I think. I just sort of looking at the responses, it's like a movie theater. Well, great. I mean, I don't know how economically viable that is. If it's I don't know what's happening with childcare, for example. I don't know if, there's hurdles to providing in-home care at an adequate level that, so part of it can just be public perception. Some of it, government can really help, I guess we just have to sort of scrape through some of that. And then on that front, I need to educate myself as well.
it looked to me like in your survey that there was not buildings, the housing units, that there wasn't an inclination for people to want apartments, that there was a strong, and I think this is an American desire to own your own home. But I was just talking to somebody yesterday, my aunt who lived to be 100 lived in an apartment with her husband that was full of kids, full of families, and it was an apartment building. Of course, it was an eastern city, but do you see that there's a reluctance at multi-unit housing here in Seward?
Oh, that's a complicated question. I think we're doing a good job of educating the need for it, but then when an idea for one pops up in a neighborhood, then all of a sudden it's like, well, I don't want it next door to me. There's also, I think, the issue of like the desire, the people who probably need to live in them the most are the ones that aren't here yet. Like if we're really trying to make this a year-round community, like we need to get more teachers, more healthcare providers, and those are the people that, and when we were talking about housing with the Planning and Zoning Commission, we had a lot of the employers write us letters about what their housing issues are, and we get a lot, the feedback that we got was, yeah, we put offers out all the time, they accept them, and then they can't find housing, and so then they reject their offer, turn down the offer, because they can't find anywhere to live. And those are the people that would desire and need the apartments the most, because, you know, if you're coming from the lower 48, you've never been to Alaska, Alaska seems like a great idea, but maybe not a great enough idea to buy an empty lot or $500,000 home. And so I want to be somewhere for a couple of years to determine if this is the long-term place for me. And so, yeah, I think the need is out there. I think the community needs to understand that they need to go somewhere, and the people that really need them are, because people want a year-round community, but people like the feel of the town, so sometimes they don't want these apartment complexes. But those kind of go together, you know, and like that's our job, is to try to help educate the public. Like, yeah, if you want to see a year-round community, then our housing situation needs to change, because we have a very high amount of single-family home and zones and rural residential zoning, which is, again, really set up for single-family homes.
Would you happen to know, in terms of apartment units as opposed to other residential housing, I mean, is Seward, you know, have more units than any other communities demographically, or fewer? I know sometimes there's a perception that we have a considerable number of income-adjusted apartments, but maybe we really don't. I don't know. Have you looked at any of those numbers?
I feel like Seward is on the high range of low-income apartment units,
Yeah.
and not much. And it's like, and sometimes we try not to use the word apartment because it has such a negative connotation at times. But in a place like Seward, you're really not looking for like big apartment complexes all the time. You know, if we could fit one or two in, that'd be great. But it's more your triplexes, your fourplexes.
Sure.
Like that's really what Seward is designed to handle, and trying to find ways to get those built in versus like these, you know, apartment complexes that people think skyscrapers, and that's not what we're kind of looking to bring here. But if you can have a lot that can have a fourplex on it versus just a big single-family home, that's super helpful to the housing stock.
Well, several years ago, and I don't know if you were very involved with it, this board spent quite a bit of time on housing. And we had invited a number of people in the industry, Jana Peterson and Nicole Lawrence, and I spoke with Andre Spinell and Larry Harmon, and on and on and on. The building of a multiplex is a little bit, multi-unit, is a little bit more cheaper, but not a lot. You know, the big obstacle was they're going to go where they can make money, obviously, and the cost of building, but there wasn't a reluctance to buy or to rent apartments. There's one down by the post office that has a 2-year backlog. And there are other places. Now, not interfering with somebody else's viewscape, you know, or inundating a yard with a neighborhood with a whole bunch of transient people, for instance. You know, there's no reason to think that people in apartments are any less stable than anybody else. And I frankly think that's personally, the only real solution that we're going to find to quickly address the housing issue. Because single-family homes take a while to build. You know, finance, to get the land, the design, everything else. But that's not really your department. It's really a matter of identifying, and I think the survey does that, housing. It came up all in a dozen slides that you put up there today. Access to housing, which accesses the trails and everything else, but the housing was a start. There's another thing, and I'm going to say this, and probably everybody will be upset, but I mentioned it to Jesse earlier today. I saw a house posted here for $2,300 a month. It's a reasonable house today. That equates to about a $70,000 to $100,000 income. You know, either 25% when I was a kid to 35 to 40% today of your income goes to housing. When Carol and I started, we rented a $100 dry cabin, and we were happy with it. Expectations have changed. I got a $1,000 cell phone. You know, so that's an obstacle, frankly. Expectations. There's got to be a multiple range. High-value housing, high-value apartments, income adjusted houses, and we do have a high percentage of income adjusted houses. And there's no reason to think that we shouldn't have more. That would be my position on this.
Don't disagree with a lot of that.
Yeah, no, that's a very good point, and that it just goes to the economy as well. I think there should be an entry point for, you shouldn't have to pay $500,000 for brick and mortar to get into business, and so, yeah, and same applies to housing.
Staff, administration?
Tony, please.
Great presentation to you and your staff. You guys have done a lot of great work, and this is just packed with a lot of things to mull over and wake up at 3 a.m. and think about.
Yeah.
Thank you.
We look forward to our.
A lot of great comments from the board, and you're not wrong on your thoughts and feelings as well. So, thank you.
Okay, I would say there is no wrong. I think we all have good points for some, and the ones, you run them up the flagpole, sort of, and see who salutes to some degree, but you cannot forget, and I think our current administration in the city understands that they need to lead. There's too many different opinions. You'd never go anywhere if somebody didn't stand up, take one, and move forward with it. Win, lose, or draw, and hopefully you pick a winner and people fall in behind.
I have a question for you. You mentioned earlier that Homer is working on their comprehensive plan, and you said they're running at a cost of around $600,000. So did they hire an outside company then to do that?
Yes.
What do you expect that the city's saving by having it done in-house?
Oh, $600,000, yeah.
I mean, you're paying your staff though, right?
Yeah.
I mean, there is costs involved with doing this yourself. I mean, I guess my question is the savings justifying not having a third-party, non-biased party come in and do this for the city?
Yeah, and we've gotten a lot of support from Kat's office, city manager's office, to let us see what we can handle. And so I think part of the issue of having an outside firm come in is that they don't really know the community. But we spent the last year and a half reaching out to the community, like dozens and dozens of community organizations. So like people know that like we want to get that feedback. And so I think that's really important. So I feel confident about our part of the public engagement process. Drafting, when we get to that stage, will be a whole nother level of this project that we need to balance between our full-time jobs. Because we didn't hire any additional staff to help with this, so we would still have jobs without this project. We just have maybe different responsibilities or whatnot, and so that'll kind of be the next step. And we did bring in, and we will bring in people or outside firms when we think it's like necessary. So like the town halls, for example, like it was recommended to us by several different cities that we talked to or people we've talked to worked on comprehensive plans that it's good to have like a non-biased party like facilitate a town hall so it doesn't look like the city's pushing the scale on certain aspects that they would want in a comprehensive plan. And so we did work with a firm and gave them a lot of the data that we got from the surveys, and they were able to help us facilitate those conversations and facilitate those town halls. And so we're not opposed to bringing in outside help when need be. We just are taking it one step at a time and seeing how we do. So.
No, I think you guys are doing a great job, I'm not suggesting in any way that that's what the city does. I'm just kind of, wondering what we're seeing financially in that respect.
Yeah.
But I could say that Moose Pass Advisory Board is working on a comprehensive plan, and we talked to the, not the Rasmussen, but there's another, not McNaughton, that's books, but a group to do our comp plan, and it was expensive. And we ultimately decided that being able to do it in-house brought more community involvement. And hopefully then, as a result of that, more buy-in. I think we all see these top-down things. There it is, guys. And, there's a certain resistance right away. So this hopefully will not have that when it hits the streets finally. A question on page 45, you got the little chart, your plan update, and through December 25, you're talking about interviews, and you talked about interviewing Tony in the Harbor Department. What were the other groups that you needed to interview? Board Member Atwood mentioned, a business group of some sort, if there was. I know the chamber might be able to proctor or help with that, but.
Yeah, we reached out to as many community organizations as we knew when we were doing the educational round of the surveys, and so now we're trying to follow up with those groups. And so we want to meet with each city department, Chamber of Commerce, all the commissions, and like we met with the Seward Arts Council. I don't know who else we've got on our list, but yeah, Rotary Club, Legion, like just different established community organizations is kind of the phase we're in.
Pioneers?
Pioneer, we did meet with the Pioneers, yeah,
Okay.
to plug the surveys, and so they're on that list too.
Okay, and when you said if we had thoughts, we'd provide them, and did you provide us your email, or should it go through the clerk, or how would you want any additional comments?
Yeah, you can email them directly to our office, myself, Courtney.
Okay, and maybe you get us
I'll get them, I'll get
a
you.
link, okay?
I'll get you their email.
And I would say this too, that I mentioned the pioneers, and that's another thing that's bounding around my head. I am getting into the age where I am excited about passing this off to other people, younger ideas. My ideas, I hope, are not stale, but they need to come from the 40 to 49-year-old group that you talked about, or even the middle school kids.
Yeah.
I think that's right on. Go for it. Okay. Anything else yeah, please.
Yeah, sorry. So surprisingly, this is the first time I've been able to see the community development go through the survey results. I was in many meetings that they went to, including going kind of to their kickoff meeting that they held at one of the local Seward businesses. And so they did a really good job of reaching out to as many people as they could through the process of the survey taking. And I saw them kind of pivot too. So they went and presented at the Seward Schools Site-Based Council meeting. And someone asked them, are you going to meet with our high schoolers? Are you going to meet with your middle schoolers? And then they took that and they did. And now it's being referenced in this plan. So I really commend all the footwork that they did leading to getting these results. Even though it looks like the survey take rate is low, I will say it's probably about average. For like the the health needs assessment that Providence does, I want to say is around that like 400 range. And so I wouldn't say it's low, I would absolutely say it's average. And the results of this, they're going to be used by organizations in the town. This is going to be something that our nonprofits and businesses and stuff can use as a document that has, the city's approval on it, saying this is what we need. This is my plan to get it, and hopefully help with development of it. Last night, I was at the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting where they were discussing priorities, and several of those short-term and long-term priorities referenced the comprehensive survey results. So it's already being enacted without necessarily like a fully developed strategic plan. There's still ways for our boards and commissions to use these results in working the work forward, and so I would definitely recommend taking that. There's two things that I've circled on here, and I know I've kind of gone to a couple different meetings and beat the drum on, is parking in the harbor. And so this summer, it was great. There was actually an enforcement of the 2-hour parking, which helps the businesses in that area have local population go and utilize those businesses regularly throughout the summer. There was always a parking spot in the 2-hour parking space. There was never I'll see if there's a spot and then just continue driving. I was always able to park and stop. One of my concerns as the development of the uplands happens is the uplands parking is already an issue. And so taking away parking of that, it'll be interesting for me to see that develop. I also commend this board for taking on the housing. Not only did you have the realtors come, but you also had the large businesses in town come. You had Dr. Henry Burns and Dr. Kara Reimer and LeCompte, the current director of Avtech, come and give expertise on what they were seeing. And I believe that the economic development didn't necessarily have to be more asked in this survey. I think the questions were enough because we have the Seward Chamber of Commerce, we have the Seward Small Business Development Office, we have the Kenai Peninsula Economic Development Division. And so I think that there are ways to pull that information in without requiring survey fatigue from our participants. I definitely had survey fatigue from the comprehensive plan surveys because I didn't realize it was going to be 4 separate until I went to the kickoff meeting and scanned the QR code, and I was like, there's 4 here. And so it was definitely a long process to do one and then feel like I had the capacity to do another one and then have the capacity to do another one. So those are just my thoughts as a citizen on kind of the process and how I see it moving forward. And you had Casey Warner came and talked about the child care. And I think that is a continuing conversation. Council just saw a resolution to consider child care as a priority in future economic development. And we see it in the survey here of, yeah, that could be a priority. I'm not sure what the continuing role of PACAB will be on that. I think that's possibly something to come forward with planning and zoning and city council because there is like, when you have an in-home business, there is a percentage of your home that can be used for a business, unless that's changed in recent times. There's a lot of information out there, so I missed some of it. But yeah, so I just thank everyone and I thank the opportunity for the community development team to do many of these presentations so that it can be seen and understood by a wide variety of audience.
Thank you. You've got a good memory.
Get her an application.
Yeah, please. I think, you guys should be commended. It's a long, drawn-out thing, particularly doing it in-house, like Melissa said. If you hire a firm and they throw down this thing pretty quickly, it's not the same, though. It's not the same. And ultimately, when you do waive this in front of a state legislator or a federal legislator or a grant, you're talking about, there was a line holder for a grant writer. They use this kind of stuff. They live on this kind of stuff. And you show them a middle school picture that parallels the general community's attitude. Man, that's going a long way. That's going a long way. So you need to be commended. And thanks for bringing this to us. I won't draw this out anymore. I think we can all add comments to you, Dan. I hope that you stay the course. Okay. Anybody else? Okay, well, if we run out of talking points and we have met your needs,
Yes.
I mean, that was our goal here, is to help and present things for you to digest. Good. Okay, well, we'll adjourn the meeting at 1:30 something, 4, 6? 34.